I'm talking with Felecia Marshall, author of the recently released book from Energon Publications, Grant Me Justice. The book is available in shipping, and we're going to talk to her about what the core subject of this book is. What do you expect to get from this book? And the bottom line is this book is the story of suddenly hearing about the violence, but then the years of dealing with the justice system and how at, you cannot, how unjust things may have been, how difficult it is to find justice. Uh, Lead us into that story. How can those who have not experienced what you experienced come to a better understanding of what goes on?
I talk about this in the book. I don't think I had my expectation when I walked in the doors of the courtroom was that the state of Mississippi would represent me. Um, as a victim, I thought I had the upper hand. But midway through a 3 year um, journey through the criminal justice system, I realized that I really did not have the upper hand. And I also recognized that the people that were on the other side of the table did not really have an upper hand either. And I thought we all were dealt um, a bad hand. And from my perspective, when I walked away, I felt compassion for the defendants because I don't feel like they had the opportunity to be tried, and they were offered plea deals that they accepted that may or may not have been accurate for what they did.
Okay, so if the victim and you as representing the victim and the defendants, or we'll say the perpetrators, don't have the upper hand in the courtroom, is this something of an anonymous system, or what is the reality? What's driving this court process?
Well, I think what's driving it is money. And, if there are deals are offered, then there's no need for a court, which is costly. And I think that that's what drives plea deals is the fact that they're trying to save money. But in the midst of that, there are people that are caught up in this process, and those are the victims and the defendants. And from my perspective, when I look on the other side of the table and I see an African American man the same age as my child standing before a judge, I would want him to have every right that the Constitution grants him. And from my perspective, just by my experience in those 3 years, I don't think that happened.
One of the remarkable things, and I'll tell you as editor, and when I was reading your book, one of the things that hit me so hard as I was reading this is the fact that you are seeing both sides of the system and seeing that the system isn't supporting either one. Now, you've taken some action through Grant Me Justice, where you help to represent the victims. What can people do to try to improve uh, justice, to try to bring greater justice to people? I think a lot of people assume that justice is going on because they haven't been in the courtroom.
Well, I think the main thing is to be aware that just because, like I said, when I went there, I assumed that the state of Mississippi was going to represent me. And I think there's an awareness that needs to happen from our community that that's not what's happening. And I also think that when we go to vote, it's so important for us to recognize that when we go to the votes that are not national votes, but our local voting, I think we need to be serious about the people that we're voting for. Because I had no idea, although I voted for one of the judges that was in the courtroom, I had no idea that this particular judge would stand before me judging my case. And when I went before that particular judge, that judge accepted a plea deal um, for 15 years.
So that's something that I have a very strong feelings about too, is that we often gather everybody out to vote for president, but we miss everything from school boards to county commissioners to county and state judges, city councilmen, et cetera. And I mean, we can all list those. So we can join in one thing here for sure, is tell everybody to vote get out and vote in your local elections. That's an action that people can take.
And to be familiar with the people that you're voting for. There's a
Yes.
tendency to just vote for the people that we just see on TV, or vote for the people just because they're an African American person or a Caucasian person, Democrat or Republican, but to be really familiar with their platforms and what they stand for, because these people will preside in something, that affects us.
Yeah. And hopefully we can encourage the media to give us more information on that.
Oh, yeah.
Because I've found very difficult. I don't know what your experience is. Very difficult to find the information that I want on a local election, especially about a judge.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's very hard to find out what that person's record actually is. Okay, well, we took a little extra time on that because I feel very strongly about it. In the end, in this book, though, the place where you look for justice is from God.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the things that happens a great deal, and I would say that African American churches do better than white churches on this, and I could say that, is that we tend to say either we're going to act here or we're going to leave it to God. And when you say you're getting your justice from God, as you've just said, talking about voting and so on and so forth, you don't mean quit being involved in this world, but you do mean, well, what is it that you mean in the end when you say where you're looking for justice is God?
Well, grant me justice, the name comes from Luke chapter 18, verse 1 through 8, where the widow goes before the unjust judge seeking justice. That particular parable is actually about persistent prayer, but from my perspective, it's about going before the unjust judge seeking justice, period. And knowing that the judge cannot offer justice because he's in need of justice too, meaning he's an imperfect being as well. And he needs the same justice that we need in regards to our faith in Christ Jesus. And so when I walked away from the third case, and I felt like I had left something on the table, I knew that there was nothing else that I could do. I did everything that I was supposed to do. So when I walk away, either I can walk away and sulk in that, or I can have hope in the faith that I stand on, that God is a God of justice, that he avenges us. And that's what I stand it on.
Okay, so in the end, it really, with what you've said there, you're making a plea for the grace for all of the parties, the victims, for the perpetrators, and for those who are perhaps participating in or locked into a system that leaves them standing in need of the grace as well as all of us do.
Oh, yeah. And don't get me wrong, when I walked into the courtroom, every time I walked in the courtroom seeking justice for Lexi. I wanted those responsible for murdering her to pay for what they did. At the same time, although, and I mentioned this in the book, that although those people suffer the consequences for murdering my daughter, they still need to know that there's still hope and that the gospel is still available to them, whether they're behind bars or not. The gospel is still available to them.
And that is a powerful statement, and I want to let that be the conclusion of what you say here. I'll tell everybody the book is Grant Me Justice, and if you really want to get this fleshed out with both the background story and leading up to this understanding of God's grace that's so important. The book, Grant Me Justice, I'll have right now a QR code as well as a link on the video. If you want to point your phone at the QR code or go to the link, you can find out more about purchasing this book and reading it. And I will tell you, having gone in to it wondering, because I've read so many books of anger or that just don't lead anywhere. So I go in with a little bit of how shall I say, a little bit of fear that I'm going to have to figure out how to say, well, yeah, it's your story, but I really can't publish it. But in this case, this drew me in, and I learned a great deal from this book, and I commend it to our readers. Thank you for your time.